Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette.
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Movie Oubliette, the Continental Connecting podcast with me, Dan, pulling out my scarves, woolly socks, and beanies here in Melbourne, Australia.
And me, Conrad, walking out of secret screenings in Cambridge, UK.
Oh, in this podcast, we discuss forgotten genre films, sci-fi, horror, and fantasy, because if only we could experience lockdown again, but with zombies. Hello, Conrad.
Please, no. So, I guess it's turning cold where you are.
Yeah, it's officially winter. I know, complaining about winter in Australia, but it does get really cold in Melbourne, and the house is not built for it. And it's just like, yeah, we have to really rug up. And also, listeners, you will hear that familiar click sound from my heater turning on and off in the background as it reaches temperature, and because it's officially winter in Melbourne.
Yeah, take a shot whenever you hear Dan's heating come on.
But meanwhile, Conrad, what movies did you walk out of?
Yeah, our local cinema does this great thing where they do secret screenings and you show up and you don't know what it's going to be. And sometimes they call it secret screaming and you know it's going to be a horror movie.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I was all excited because I thought it might be the new movie by those Australian brothers that didn't talk to me.
Bring Me Back or
year.
Bring Her Back. Yeah, I've heard about it. I've seen the trailer. It looks creepy as.
Yeah, it does. Or maybe Weapons, which looks really exciting. Or 28 Years Later, which is coming soon. I was sort of like hoping it was one of those. Or even Clown in a Cornfield, which is the one by the guys who did Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Okay.
I thought it could be fun. But no, the first one was The Ritual, which is an exorcism movie with Al Pacino as the exorcist.
Oh, okay. Right. So not that...
the David Bruckner movie.
Not that one. Okay. No. I haven't heard of that one.
No, I'm so tired of exorcism movies with aging actors just sort of phoning it in. I mean, maybe not. Maybe Al Pacino does the epitome of exorcism performances, but I'm kind of bored of it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I am too. I do feel like every single exorcist movie is the same. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's the same movie. Yeah. And then the second one was one called Dangerous Animals, which is about a serial killer who likes feeding women to sharks.
Okay.
And I just thought, I mean, I'm sure it's groundbreaking and edgy and exciting, but I just thought, I just not in the mood to watch women being fed to sharks this evening. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Apparently it is quite confronting and quite a good thriller.
Okay.
Wasn't in the mood for that. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's secret screenings for you, because you can't prepare. Well, you can't look forward to anything. You're just presented with whatever it is.
Yeah. And sometimes you get great things, like I saw Dungeons and Dragons a couple of weeks before it was due out. Usually they pick things where they want to generate, the studio clearly wants to generate word of mouth beforehand.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's, sometimes you get to see something really great early and you get to tell all your friends, go see it. But yeah, not so much this time, unfortunately.
All right. Well, anything in the mailbag today, Conrad?
Yes, we heard from our friend Joe Lipsitter, the horror quiz on Looker. Oh, yes. And he said, I'm so glad you cover this. I agree that it's not a good film, but it is a wild and entertaining one. Hard agree that the conspiracy plot and a lot of the climax is confused, but damn if I don't love this stupid taupe thriller. But he says, also, you're dead wrong about the theme song. It's such a bop.
Okay. Well, I'm glad someone likes it.
Yeah, true. We also heard from Wicked Person, long-time listener, on The Tall Man. He said, sat down to listen to this episode without previewing the movie, thinking to myself, I can't remember whether I watched Jeff Goldblum in this 80s slapstick comedy or not.
Oh, right. That's right. What was that movie called?
The Tall Guy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, very different movies.
Very different. Yeah, Jasmine told us to throw that one back in the oubliette as well. I don't remember it.
I don't think I've seen it, no.
And finally, we heard from Serge of Cold Crash Pictures.
Ooh.
Hello, Serge.
Hello, Serge.
And Serge says, The Tall Man is built around its one half-baked twist and seems to think that a final shot acknowledgement that the premise is absolutely bonkers will somehow make up for wasting the viewer's time. I'd been shouting at the TV that the premise was bonkers for an hour already.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that twist really does kind of break the movie. It really does.
Yeah, it does. So I don't know. I guess it depends whether you can get over that or not, whether you can still enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it's...
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing for me was the fact that they portrayed her as some sort of victim. And it's just, that's not what she is. she is the villain. She is 100% the villain here.
Yeah, it was going for sort of 70s moral ambiguity, but it's pretty hard when you're stealing kids.
Yeah, that's not good. That is not good.
I think we're all agreed on that. There's no moral ambiguity.
Yeah, no.
It's just bad. Yeah. But unless you disagree, if you think stealing children is great, let us know.
Yeah.
We always love hearing from you.
Yes, we do. Okay, Conrad. What's the film for today?
Well, let me just head on over to the oubliette to find out.
Oh, yes.
I appear to be in like a pizza restaurant, but it really stinks.
Yeah, all the plates are still there, all the food's still there, but it's rotten.
Oh, there's a skeleton here. He's clutching a DVD. Let me just prise that out of his fingers. Oh, he's got keys for a scooter. I'll come back that way. Yeah. It'll be faster.
Okay. Put on your helmet.
Oh, yeah, of course. Safety first.
Oh, code red.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a fun time.
It was, yes. And I've got a great film for you.
Yes.
It's the 2007 post-apocalyptic horror film 28 Weeks Later, directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, based on a screenplay by the director and Rowan Joffe, E.L. Levine, and Jesus Olmo. And it stars Robert Carlyle, Rose Byrne, Jeremy Renner, Harold Perrineau, Catherine McCormack, Macintosh Muggleton, and Imogen Poots, which must be the most British names that have ever happened, and Idris Elba.
Oh, wow. Stacked cast there.
That's pretty impressive.
So what happens in this sequel to the 28 Days Later?
It's 6 months after the rage virus turned Britain into a nation of shaky cam cannibals. The US Army decides it's time for a sequel and sets up a safe zone on Canary Wharf, because a zombie outbreak couldn't possibly be worse than Millwall supporters. Don, our hero, who abandoned his wife to be eaten in the pre-title sequence, is eagerly awaiting the return of his two children, Andy and Tammy, because if there's one thing a quarantined biohazard needs, it's poorly supervised minors. On a quest to find a photo of their mother, Andy and Tammy venture into the Forbidden Zone and find the next best thing, their mother, who seems to be an immune carrier of the rage virus with a cool case of red-eye to prove it. Racked with guilt and even more embarrassed to be caught out, Don visits his sleeping wife and kisses her, but Prince Charming gets more than he bargained for, and a new outbreak threatens to wipe out Britain all over again. Will the US Army panic and start shooting everything in sight? Will a 12-year-old conveniently survive every massacre with the help of Army Dr. Scarlet and hawk-eyed sniper Doyle? And will London recover from the trauma of being used as a metaphor for America's post-9/11 trauma? Find out after the break.
Yes. And we'll have a special guest.
A very, very special guest.
Yeah.
Our special guest today has made a lasting mark on international cinema since his Oscar-nominated short film Esposatos, pushing the boundaries of genre filmmaking by infusing his horrors, fantasies and thrills with psychologically complex but very human stories. He's none other than writer-director Juan Carlos Fresnadillo. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you guys?
Great.
We're very well and excited to talk to you.
Excited to talk to you as well, guys, because, shooting and making 28 Weeks Later was one of the big chapters in my life. And I'm very proud and very happy to talk to you about what we did at that time.
Yeah. It's amazing to think it's nearly 20 years ago now. Does it feel like that?
Yeah, time flies so fast. It's so funny because in many levels, it feels like a very long time. But if I navigate through my memory, it feels like literally that I did it very soon. I'm very, in terms of the time, it feels so short because it was very intense, and this is a word that I'm going to use a lot in this interview because it's probably one of the most intense experiences that I had in my life.
Wow.
Because if you want to convey something scary, intense, and human, as you perfectly defined when you were talking about the movie, I think you have to go to that zone. You are the captain and you have to be open and accept the challenge of making something really, really intense.
Wow.
I have to confess that it was great many times, but there were other times that it was so challenging and so scary, because you have to very dark zones in your psychology and in terms of the story. You have to go to places that nobody wants to go because the movie is about rage, is about that kind of feeling that we usually feel, but in a very controllable areas in our life. But if you want to go through that kind of intense feeling like the rage, but if you want to portray that in a very realistic way, you have to push the people to go there because nobody wants to go there. No, I promise you. And yeah, it was an honor and it was a challenge, as I was saying before. But, it was really difficult sometimes.
Yeah, wow. I can imagine. Well, one thing I was thinking of in terms of the challenge and also the anxiety around it is creating a sequel to a very, very popular film by a very well-known director. It must have been a daunting prospect. What made it attractive to you and what did you hope you could bring to it?
So if I'm completely honest with you guys, the first time that Danny Boyle called me and said, I would love if you think about the possibility of making this movie, my first reaction immediately was no. Right? I don't want to do that. Wow. And I said no almost internally because at that time, I haven't done at that time any scary movie. My first movie was Intacto, and Intacto is more like a fable, like a psychological thriller, but nothing as intense as 28 Days Later. And also, the first movie, the movie that Danny did, is such a iconic story that I thought it's impossible to be at the same level. It's going to be almost like a big wave coming to you, and you cannot avoid that.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, no, this is not possible. But then talking with Danny about the story, and also he was very generous and he allowed me to explore a possibility in my own terms. And then I had the idea of this family. And I have the feeling that, in all the movies that I did, family it's kind of the scenario that I love to explore, and then I started to explore in this kind of characters in Dawn, Alice, the kids. And I thought, okay, this is a very interesting scenario that I could probably develop with time, but I need time. And I ask for time. And Danny, Alex, Andrew McDonald, and Alan Reich, they were very generous, and they said, okay, you can explore that concept and you can develop the script. And then I spent almost 1 year writing and developing the story. And then when you spend such a long time doing something, immediately you are connected with that. And after developing the script for 1 year, that was the crucial time that I convinced myself to make the movie and have the courage to say, okay, despite of the fact that it comes from a very iconic and very successful movie, I think I have the courage to make a new one, a new chapter, and then trying to make something, and I'm going to try to make something really special, connected with the first movie for sure, because, in terms of the universe, I was following the rules of what happened in the first movie, but also I was kind of bringing new things, with this family. And also I was bringing a little bit bigger in terms of the scope of the movie with the introduction of the safe zone. So all these colors, I thought that it was kind of interesting to develop and making a new chapter with this. So more or less that was the process, if I have to summarize what was the thing that literally pushed me to make the new movie was the openness that Danny had in terms of bringing new things to the story and allowing me and pushing me to bring my kind of signature into the process,
Yeah. And you can definitely see that signature in the drama that focuses on the family. One thing that surprised me about that was when I saw the setup, particularly the opening sequence, which is such a gripping opening sequence, is that it looks to me as though we're setting ourselves up for a really juicy, dramatic situation, because Robert Carlyle's character, Don, abandons his wife, he gives her up for dead, and tells his children that he saw her die. But then, of course, we learn that she survived, which is a really shocking twist. And I thought, okay, I cannot wait for this moment when she wakes up and they have to deal with this, sort of along the style of something like force majeure, this survivor's guilt, this decision that he's made. But quickly it goes off in a different direction. And I was wondering if you were tempted to explore that, or if you were more interested in different dynamics.
I think, the opening of the movie, to me, it feels like it's almost like a statement about the story, because the first movie explores the idea of the loneliness and the desolation that somebody finds when suddenly wakes up in a hospital and the whole city is devastated. I wanted to explore the idea, a kind of progressive idea in terms of how sometimes survival is stronger than love.
Right.
And I think it's completely inside of the idea of somebody realizing that your wife is about to die, and this character, Don, chooses his own life. Because, the survival in many people works in that way, It's stronger. It's probably the strongest force that we have, survive. And how feeling that, the consequences of feeling that, which I think it's a massive guilt. And that to me was kind of the drive of the whole movie. Because if you analyze the character of Don, Robert Carlyle's character, everything what he did in the story, it's kind of like that guilt that he feels about what he did with his wife. It's kind of hammering all the story, He's a tragic character in that way. Despite of the fact that he completely embraced that survival feeling and he got alive because of that, then he cannot live with that guilt. And that paradox, that kind of contradiction, to me was a very important drama scenario to develop this story.
Sure. Danny Boyle's original film was famously shot on early digital cameras. Which formats did you and cinematographer Enrique Chediak choose? And what were your goals for the sort of visual style of 28 Weeks Later?
I got the feeling that 28 Days Later was a movie that explored really well the idea of making a movie with this kind of home video style, you know? And if I remember well, Danny used not really professional cameras in order to show and portray the idea of having almost like an intimate feeling, you know? If you see the first one, it's almost like the intimacy of that result of those images is really compelling, in my opinion. And I think that was great. That was a kind of a visionary idea for making a horror movie like that one. So Enrique and I, we discussed a lot about that, and we finally decided that we had to make a kind of an evolution of that. So if the first one is kind of a home video style, in order to feel the characters, in order to reflect that humanity, I think in our take, the intention was to create almost like a documentary style, almost like to really portray the idea of the reconstruction of London. So that's why we decided to use 16 millimeters. It was a celluloid movie. It wasn't digital. We decided to bring again that cinematic feeling, and we also use very small cameras. We kind of put ourselves in the skin of a journalist,
right?
Trying to portray and shoot in the new London with this family, and then the kind of reconstruction goes south, and everything becomes a very crazy and horrific experience. It's almost like to reflect the horror as well. And also we brought something really powerful, in my opinion. And it was an idea from Enrique that he said, okay, so when the camera is really close to the infected people, the camera becomes infected as well. Right? And then we have to move the camera really in a frantic way.
Wow.
And that worked really well as well, because I think it conveyed really well the power of the disease, the power of the infection.
Yeah, yeah.
The camera and the editing has to convey that kind of intensity, in many ways.
Yeah, sure.
And to be honest with you guys, 28 Weeks Later is a movie that I cannot watch many times because it's so funny. Every time that I watch the movie, I travel through time and I'm there again shooting the movie,
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Because in terms of putting everybody on the same page, and I mean putting all the actors and the extras and all the infected people on that page, you have to push a lot of people. And I remember that I literally, in order to show them how I would like to see them performing that, I remember that I put myself in the kind of infected mode, I said, and I was literally infected as well. So at the end of the day, in every day of the shooting, I ended up, so exhausted.
Wow.
So exhausted.
Yeah.
So that's why watching 20 Weeks Later, every time that I watch it now, I literally, as I said, I travel through time and I'm there screaming, yelling, and feeling again that rage that is kind of, my God, it's so intense.
Yeah. Which leads me to my next question about, because this was your first horror feature film. Like, I guess doing horror was very intense for you, but you do balance horror, action, and drama all in the one film. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it was very difficult, and it was a very challenging exercise, even from the script, And it's funny because there are many things that I explore in the screenplay process that I couldn't shoot, or I decided to remove in the editing, because I was trying all the time to humanize the infected people, And that was my intention with the character of the father, and how the father, the second that he becomes infected, he literally chases them through London.
Right, yeah.
It was really difficult. And that also shows the consistency of the universe that Danny and Alex created, because the infected people has to behave in a very particular way. And the second that you try to move that, it didn't work. So that's why it's almost like a killing machine from the very beginning to the end. And the humanization of this character was really difficult. And at the same time, it was good, because then the whole dramatic weight falls into the kids, which was some kind of a discovery as I was shooting the movie. The importance of the kids was something that I developed so well when we were shooting, because I was discovering how important these characters were,
Yeah, because you don't normally see children in zombie movies.
Yes,
so
yes.
yeah, it was quite different to see like Imogen Poots and Macintosh Muggleton as mainly the main characters in the film.
Yeah. To me, they are the heart of the story, because they witnessed how their parents are gone, in many ways.
Yeah.
So, and how in the second part of the movie, we create this kind of second family with Rose as a doctor and Jeremy Renner as a military force. So this kind of new family, they're running away from the infection, was one of the main concepts when we were developing the story, try to conceive like a story about a family that completely falls apart, but a new family rises after that.
Right. Yeah.
To bring this idea about hope and survival in the story itself, I think that was the concept, how a new family can rise in the worst conditions, But as a tragedy, almost like we wanted to be faithful with the tragic story of the whole drama. That second family also sacrifices in order to make the kids survive, which is kind of the emotional take at the end,
Sure.
You've talked about how you were interested in exploring the father even after he's infected. And I remember in interviews at the time when you were doing the original Publicity, you were talking about the fact that rage itself was the most interesting aspect of the virus.
Yeah, to me, rage is a very interesting feeling and force. When you feel rage, it's because you feel a suffering inside. And that suffering comes from the fact that maybe somebody did something to you and you want to put that suffering out of your body. And the way to make that is through rage, and it's kind of survival force as well. Rage is a way to compensate every single suffer that we had in our lives, and that kind of tragic feeling, it was kind of an inspiration from the very beginning, and it completely fuels the whole story and every single character,
Right.
So that's why the paradox about some members of this family, that they have this immunity and they can carry the virus, but they don't have the disease. It was almost like superheroes, but superheroes in a complete chaotic world, and that was an inspiring scenario to me, to be honest.
Yeah. It's a fascinating idea, the carriers and the immunity that you introduce. So it's people who can incorporate the rage without letting it completely consume them.
Yeah. And also, you become like a witness of this apocalypse, And that also touches the main force from the very first movie, which is the loneliness, the solitude, not be one of them and be completely isolated in that kind of immunity, which is a blessing for sure, but with some sort of tragic consequence,
Yeah. Now, one thing has changed since you made the movie is that we've all experienced a global pandemic. Thankfully, not rage, but...
in some cases, I would say that, we felt rage as well,
Well, we did.
You're not happy at all.
No, queuing for groceries. It was not fun.
Yeah.
In some ways, the film, some of the feelings, some of the images in both your film and Danny's film were eerily prescient, but in other ways our experience was very different. If you had to tell a story like this now, what do you think you would do differently? How would you approach it now?
I would say it's so funny because at that time when we were locked, I remember to talk with my friends and I said, guys, I have an advantage in comparison with you. I already envisioned this. And I was joking with them. I know what is going to happen, So if I have to do again something like that again, I would do it again in the same way, to be honest. Because, I think pandemic show us something that in many movies we are kind of predicted, and we in the fiction, we already explore at that time the implications of a pandemic like that one, So that's why I wouldn't do any different, If I would have to do again 20 weeks later, I think I would do the same thing again, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But to be honest, not completely true, because it's funny, many years after, thinking about 20 weeks later, I thought something that I think it would be much better, to be honest with you. And I have to confess that I had the idea because, we kill Robert Carlyle's character just in the middle of the movie because we were craving for the fact that, okay, the family fall apart completely and the second family rises, which was a very important story and it was a really big concept. But to be completely honest with you, and that was something that I discovered in the editing, killing Donnie in the middle of the movie, always I felt that, oh my God, maybe it's not the right idea because then starting a new family in the second act, it's such a big effort. And I think we did it well. And the second part of the story, because at that moment it starts the kind of full action-packed movie. And it's very entertaining and it's very powerful. And you cannot breathe until the end of the story. So I'm don't get me wrong, I'm proud of that. But then if I had to do something different, to be honest with you, probably I would change the structure of the movie. I would delay the death of Don until the end of the story.
Right. Okay.
Because I think we would have the same thing with the second family, but we would have that kind of obsessive antagonist, Don as an infected, chasing them.
Yeah. I mean, what happens at the end of the movie is you have the abandoned helicopter, and I guess it's open-ended, so you think maybe the characters have all died or maybe they haven't survived. And then there's that final shot of Paris.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, is this a lead into the next movie?
Yeah, that was the idea. And, the ending of the movie was probably one of the most difficult things because obviously, I wanted something emotional, but then at that time, it was difficult to find the emotional ending.
Sure.
And also we have to be faithful with the idea that this is a franchise and we have to bring something at the end that it has to be almost like a hook for the next one.
Right.
And that's why the idea of running with the infected people in the streets of Paris. By the way, one of the infected people running in those shots, one of them was my producer, my Spanish producer, Enrique Lopez.
Oh, right.
And myself. We decided to run with the infected people and becomes infected.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of an honor of our suffering process of making the movie. We said, what? We were also infected people in this movie. So let's be one of them. It was a guerrilla shooting in Paris. We didn't without any permission. It was completely guerrilla style.
Yeah. Right.
You just infected Paris without any permission.
Yes.
You've directed so many different genres now. You've done like thriller, you've done a movie about a dragon. What's the movie you would love to direct next? What's the genre you want to do next?
It's funny. I kind of, debating myself between sci-fi fiction and a documentary, I would like to bring in my next movie, and I'm exploring that possibility to mix reality. When I say reality, I would say almost like a documentary, but with fiction elements,
Right.
And to create like a mix between reality and fiction, I'm exploring that right now.
Wow.
I cannot tell you more than that because I'm very superstitious.
Right.
And I don't want to jinx it.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and for revisiting 28 Weeks Later.
Yes.
It's been fascinating.
Thank you.
And we're back after a fascinating interview with the director of 28 Weeks Later, Juan Carlos Fresnadillo. We're very lucky to have him.
Yes, I still don't know how you get these guests, Conrad. It still amazes me.
He was just a very, very lovely man.
Yeah, he was.
And I think he enjoyed revisiting the film as well. In fact, so much so, there's more of that interview. So for patrons, it's 15 minutes longer. He talks about his original ending and also the music. So, yeah. And if you want to support the show, head on over to Patreon. But yeah, revisiting this was fun with him. Very honest retrospective thoughts on it. Is it one you'd seen before, Dan?
Yes, it was a movie I'd seen before. I went through a really big zombie phase, sort of end of the 2000s towards 2010, and I watched like every zombie movie that I could possibly watch.
Oh, wow.
And I watched this one after obviously 28 Days Later, and I was initially disappointed, I think. by the sequel when I watched it. It's very different, although I haven't revisited 28 Days Later to sort of compare. But rewatching it again, it's much better than I remember it.
It is. It's definitely a second chance movie. I had the same journey with it. So I remember watching it at the time on DVD. It was at the height of the DVD era, so there were loads of bonus features on there. So that was really fun to watch and delve into. And I remember just thinking that I didn't find it as compelling as the original, just because the original has such a great premise, which is Jim wakes up 28 days after the whole world has ended and just wanders around London alone.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty hard to top that as a compelling premise. But I think Juan Carlos Fresnadillo and Danny Boyle and the rest of the team did come up with an interesting idea for this one. And I think rewatching it, it has been unjustly overlooked.
Yeah, I think the premise of 28 Weeks Later, it's very different to any other zombie film I've actually really seen. Like the fact that it's set in a city, well, it's in London, and they've gotten rid of the virus and it's repopulating the city. That's quite new to me. I haven't really seen that in another movie. And also having kids in a zombie movie is something you just don't see unless it's a black comedy. And so it just raises the stakes a lot higher.
Yeah, it does. And it means that, I mean, I saw an interview where Juan Carlos said that rebuilding the family is sort of a metaphor for rebuilding England. And it's interesting that the original family fails. I mean, it's quite shocking. We talk about this, that the father dies 46 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
And then you end up with a new family unit. And it becomes like Act 3 is like an escape narrative. So it's just purely like instead of escape from New York, it's escape from London. And instead of criminals, it's both the military and the infected, both of whom are equally dangerous.
Yeah, I found that those two aspects of the film were, again, very different for a zombie film, having all that military presence. It kind of reminded me of Dog Soldiers having like very, very trained killers in a genre film, in a horror film, in a sort of zombie environment. Dog Soldiers, a werewolf environment, was really interesting. And having all these protocols that they just did, and it wasn't based on moral dilemmas, or they just had to follow orders, and that's just not something I'd really seen much in a zombie movie. Normally it's about, what decision will they make, but they just have to. They're army guys, they have to follow orders. And the other aspect that I found different as well was it's very open. Like they're running around in London, deserted streets, often during the daytime. It doesn't have the same claustrophobic zombie aspect in normal zombie films, where it's just like we have to bang a bunch of boards on windows so that they don't come in. Like it's always very claustrophobic, very siege set up. Whereas this was very open, just running around streets, getting into cars, and planes bombing buildings. Like it was a very different environment for a zombie film.
Yeah, and it's impressive how he was able to widen out the scope, because the budget for this was not huge.
Yeah.
It was bigger than the original, because I think the original was only about 8 million. I think the budget for this was 15, so just less than double. But still, for that, he gets a fairly big bang for his buck. I mean, certainly once you get to the scenes where the military is firebombing Canary Wharf, some of the digital effects maybe show their age.
Yeah.
Because this movie is nearly 20 years old, but it's still, the scope of it is ambitious. The amount of work that must have gone into removing signs of life from these epic shots of an abandoned London.
Yeah. I did wonder how they did that, because again, it's like 28 Days Later, it's these wide shots of London, a very populated city, but they've made it deserted. Did they just close off streets, or did they actually have to digitally take out people and cars?
Yeah, they did.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Juan Carlos mentions it in the commentary track that the special effects, a lot of it was just removing things.
Really?
So
That's really interesting.
And he said it's much harder than adding things in.
Yeah, like it's done very well. Like I didn't see any, I don't know, I don't even know what I'm looking for, artifacts or weird blurring or masking or whatever. Like it looks like a deserted London. It reminded me of Night of the Comet, where there's just no one around, and it's a impressive feat to pull off.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, it's not like, I think in Lord of the Rings, wasn't there a car that drove by in the background of Lord of the Rings and they had to digitally remove it? Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was quite tricky, apparently. So they weren't doing the trick that they did on the original movie, which is just get up at like 4 a.m. in the morning.
Right, yeah.
Walk across London Bridge while nobody was there. They were filming. And all of it was filmed day for night as well, which is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, there's a bunch of scenes that were day for night. And I remember originally watching it and thinking, oh, it's quite obvious. But it's done very well now that I look at it again. I heard there were 2 reasons for that. One, it was easier to film in the day and have no lights on. Whereas filming at night, they would have to, again, digitally remove all the lights from the buildings, which would have been just painstaking. The other reason I read was the actor that played Andy, very appropriately named Macintosh Muggleton. Is that a real name?
It is.
He sounds like he should be in Harry Potter. Like,
it
anyway.
Really does. Yeah, and then Imogen Poots, as I say, it's the most British names imaginable.
Yeah. So apparently he couldn't film at night because he was a child, I guess, or maybe it was in
there
the
are
contract
laws
that you
against
can't.
it.
Yeah, there are laws. Because it would have been like, 11 o'clock at night kind of thing. Like it was dark. Yeah. So another reason why they did the day for night. But it's pulled off. I think it looks great.
Yeah, one aspect I didn't even imagine they talk about in the making of is the costume designer had to design all of the costumes so that they would photograph the way that they should if it was nighttime after they'd adjusted the color and the contrast and so on. So the clothes that they're wearing and the makeup that they're wearing, it just look ridiculous in the daytime.
Really?
Because they're all designed for what it will look like when everything is adjusted. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I can't even imagine that. It must be really tricky.
Yeah, they must have had to do a bunch of tests. Yeah, with whatever color grading that they put on it.
Yeah.
So that would actually turn out how it would turn out. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
I did notice watching this movie again now and having more of an idea of filmmaking, because back when I first watched it, I was like 24 or something. I didn't know anything about films. But since the podcast, I've learned a lot, especially with you teaching me many things. But there seems to be quite a lot of inspiration from other films that I found from this movie. So the scene with Doyle surveilling the skyscraper of all these people repopulated the city, it felt very Rear Window to me.
Right.
Like spying on all of these windows. There's a scene at the end where they're in the tunnel and it's night vision. It felt very much like Silence of the Lambs to me. It's the end of Silence of the Lambs. Like sort of very like claustrophobic, don't know where anything is kind of thing, and they're just walking around in the dark. And I also mentioned Night of the Comet with the deserted streets and 2 kids kind of just gallivanting around, like overturned cars and just the apocalypse pretty much. But I'm not sure whether Juan sort of intentionally did these things. Like I don't know whether they were actually nods or not, or whether he just thought these were good ideas for these scenes.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of them are so imbued, if you're a cinephile and you've watched all of these great movies, you can just imagine that some of those things will just be embedded in you and they would just
come out naturally.
Yeah, I think so. But you're right, it does evoke all of those things and incorporate them really well. None of it feels, that's the thing that I really liked about it, none of it feels like it's leaning too hard on the original or any other zombie movie.
Yeah, I feel like the zombies were almost background characters. Like they were always a threat, obviously. And I did feel that Don, the dad that becomes a zombie, almost becomes this like villain zombie, like the head zombie that they're trying to get sort of escape from. He becomes this kind of non-speaking villain character that just is there. But for the most part, the zombies feel like they're just, they're the threat, obviously, but they're not the main part of the movie.
No, it feels like the countdown is to get away from the military because they're taking such a raise it all and close down the borders type of approach to it that you need to try and get out. So, yeah, you're right. I did notice that Don I was thinking about Lord of the Rings again, weirdly enough.
Oh, yes.
How you'd end up with one Uruk-hai or something that would be like the general or something would be like the featured baddie, and you get that in this with Don, which is interesting. It's funny because reading some of his other interviews, Juan Carlos has talked about wanting to try to explore the experience of being infected, but as he said to us, it breaks the 28 whatever later formula.
Right.
They still have to be kind of this unknowable threat.
Because they don't really talk about the zombies that much. I mean, they never say the word zombie ever.
No.
It's always the infected.
It's verboten.
Yeah. So they never really talk about the zombies. Like, they are infecting very quickly, and it's all sorts of fluids, right? It's saliva, it's blood, it's anything. It's just an exchange of any fluid, and it's seconds that they turn, which is astonishingly fast in terms of zombie universes. Like, normally it takes a while. Hours sometimes.
I remember Dawn of the Dead. There was a guy that was bedridden for days, wasn't there?
Yeah. So it's fast, and again, we have to talk about the fact. The zombies are fast-moving zombies. They are not your slow 60s, 70s, 80s zombies. These are quick, and I don't know whether they're hunting in packs or they sense life, or do they smell? Is it taste? Is it sight? Like, I don't know how they work. No. And it's never really talked about. It's never really explained. They're just there, and it's assumed that we just know how zombies behave, I guess. And that's what I kind of meant by the zombies are not really main characters in this movie. They're just there.
No, you're right. It's not like The Walking Dead where they explored it. Like, I remember there was the bit where they sort of smothered themselves in offal to try and disguise their smell from the zombies, and then they could walk through them. Or Shaun of the Dead where they just act like zombies and then nobody else spots them.
Yeah. So it's a very different film in that respect. Like, it's almost like, we've established the universe of 28 Days Later. We're just back in that universe. We've already talked about the zombies or whatever in that movie. It's just a different story in this movie. Yeah. And we already know about the zombies.
Yeah. So we'll move on because we've set that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a film made with a lot of love and a lot of respect for the original.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to build on it and how to show you something different but still keep it compelling.
Yeah. And it kind of expanding on it as well within the universe of 28 Days Later. Also just, being in London is incredible.
Yeah.
Just the scope and the vastness of it and so iconic. It's just something that wouldn't be done now. I feel like they would just CGI London and you would have this pristine, glossy CGI London that these people are walking around in this green screen on, and it just wouldn't look the same. Like, it looks so authentic in this movie.
Yeah. It's still a gritty movie despite the expansion of the scope.
Yeah.
It's still scary. It's pretty gnarly as well and gruesome when it needs to be.
I think it's in part to how it was shot and how Juan mentioned if the zombies were close to the camera, it meant that the camera operator became infected, and it was just frenetic.
Yeah.
So there was that, and also I felt like the score really amped it up. Every scene, the score was just wall of sound. It was almost overstimulating. Just the amount of sound going on in those sort of action sequences. I felt my whole body clenching up through all those sequences. And then often they would just drop out. Everything would drop out, and it would almost be like, oh my God, I can breathe again.
Yeah.
Like it felt like that throughout the entire movie. And there were so many set pieces that were just so nail-bitingly gripping that it was almost like I couldn't breathe until they finished. And I was like, oh, thank God, I can breathe again.
Yeah, they really do ramp up the tension. I love John Murphy's approach.
Yes.
Yeah, and he was faced with the challenge of building on these sort of iconic 4 or 5 tracks that he'd done for the original, because Danny Boyle didn't actually want much music for the original. He wanted more of a needle drop approach. Whereas Juan Carlos really wanted to amp up the size and the scope of it. And it's tricky to do that with the sort of lo-fi post-punk prog rocky approach that John Murphy takes to these scores. In the interview, he mentions that they recorded a string section in Prague to add on to some of the bigger scenes, and it just didn't sound right. So he ended up, when they were mixing it, pushing that sound through these tiny, tinny speakers so that it would mix in with the rest of the score and create that wall of sound that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I love his scores for these 2 films.
I mean, the score it's really phenomenal. I mean, that main theme will just stay with you forever. It's haunting. It's visceral. It's like the backbone sonically of the whole movie. It's great. That like sort of rising guitar is it's amazing. It's amazing, and it does. Yeah, there is that sort of gritty rock band sound to the whole score. There are some sequences of more electronic drums and piano, sort of atmospheric synths and synth parts. And there is strings as well. I did, like you mentioned, during Alice's death, there's a lot of strings in there. It's almost like counter what you would expect in that scene. Like the strings are deeply emotional and deeply moving with this just brutally horrific death.
Yeah.
It juxtaposes quite well.
Yeah. He doesn't go for the obvious. And I think that was one that he was encouraged by Danny Boyle and Juan Carlos Fresnadillo to not go for Mickey Mouse horror scoring. So it freed him up to really experiment and see what would work. So he doesn't really comment on what's happening on screen so much as just create a ramping sonic experience for it.
Right.
But, I don't know. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
I mean, to me, I have to admit, it did feel a little needle droppy at times, because the music would start as the action sequence starts and it would end as the action sequence. It felt very almost music video to me. Yeah. It still worked. I still loved it. And every cue was just phenomenal. But it did feel not repetitive, but it almost felt like, especially on a second watch, it felt like, oh yes, this is the next big crazy zombie scene. Let's go.
Yeah, he did say that as soon as you hear that repeating piano figure of the 2 notes, I think they're just an octave apart, aren't they? Ding, boom, ding, boom. Yeah. As soon as that starts, you sort of know this isn't going to go well. Whatever's happening now, it's not going to go well.
Yeah. One thing I did kind of want to mention about this movie is, for me, it felt quite realistic for a zombie movie. It didn't feel like we were just watching a whole bunch of dumb people make dumb mistakes, although a lot of the extras do. But all the main characters made really smart decisions. I think all the time. Like, it didn't feel like I was shouting at the characters, don't go in there, don't do that. Like, it felt like, especially having Doyle, this like military guy, just making very good decisions about things. Yeah. And it's quite different for a zombie movie, I guess. Like, they're not dumb characters.
No. And even Idris Elba, very early role for him, he plays sort of the commander of this whole thing, even though he is initiating a code red at the end, which is, in order to contain this, we've just got to shoot everybody. We can't be selective. It doesn't come across as, like he's some foaming at the mouth totalitarian monster who's lost his moral compass. He's just doing the only thing he can in that circumstance.
Yeah, everything felt like it was the right decision, even if it was horrific and massacring a whole bunch of people. Like the grand scheme of things, yeah, you do not want this rage virus to spread.
No.
And the only way is, yes, you have to bomb London. Unfortunately.
And start again. It's amazing to imagine, though. The whole reconstruction aspect is fascinating when you watch it again, because you think, God, what would you do?
Yeah.
If a whole island has been wiped out by some horrible outbreak.
Yeah.
Would you try to repopulate it? The infrastructure is sitting there, but there would be so much work to do. You know, you get a sense of just the scale of the clearance and the cleanup and reestablishing. So they're just doing it on this little island and then trying to build out from there. And you think, gosh, is it worth bothering? Maybe you just leave it.
I mean, I did think they didn't really leave it enough time. I would have left it at least a year. At least. Yeah. It just felt like, wow, you're just bringing children again? Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess they didn't know about the carriers. They didn't know about Alice being like asymptomatic and being able to control the virus, I guess, but not showing it outwardly, but also being able to infect other people.
Yeah, I'm interested to see whether those threads are picked up in Danny Boyle's new trilogy. I think it's going to be, apparently.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, apparently there are going to be 3 of them. So there's the first one is coming out obviously shortly after this episode lands.
Yeah.
And then I think Nia DaCosta filmed the sequel to that back to back while Danny Boyle was filming that one.
Okay.
And that's called Temple of Bones or something. And then there is going to be a third one, which I think Danny intends to return to direct.
Okay.
So, yeah, wow. You wait several years for a sequel to come along and then 3 come along all at once.
I mean, it seems to be quite a common thing these days. Like, we can't release one single sequel. It has to be a trilogy or at least 2-parter. I don't know. It seems quite a popular choice these days for franchises.
Coming to you live from the movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
Yes, it's Mobley Awards time, where we nominate our favourite fast-moving, ravenous parts of the film in a number of guilt-laden, blood-soaked categories.
Best quote.
I struggled with favourite quote.
Yeah, me too.
The dialogue is, I mean, it's, as you say, very realistic. So there isn't a lot of sort of flowery prose or sort of smart one-liners in this movie. So eventually I just went for just a great bit of delivery, which is Idris Elba in the command centre saying, "We've lost control." And I thought, it's kind of chilling because he just says it so matter-of-factly.
Yeah.
Love it.
My favorite quote, it's, again, nothing like outstanding, but it's when Scarlett is explaining sort of the protocol about the outbreak. And she says, step 1, kill the infected. Step 2, containment. If containment fails, step 3, extermination. Oh, love it.
Best hair or costume?
Again, nothing hugely remarkable in terms of hair and costume. I did want to point out one thing, and maybe this is more of a 2000s cliche, but Tammy wears a long sleeve shirt under a t-shirt, and that was a very fashionable choice around the 90s, early 2000s that doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah, I remember doing it. Oh dear. My pick would be Andy is wearing a Real Madrid shirt, which I think is a little nod to the home country of the director and his cinematographer. Although they're keen to point out in the commentary track that they are not Real Madrid supporters.
Right, okay.
Yeah, they're not from Madrid.
Right.
Most naughty moment.
Well, I hinted at what mine was going to be in my synopsis, which is that this film is very much caught up in the 2000s trend of sort of visually referencing the post-apocalyptic trauma of 9/11.
Ah, yeah.
So I'm thinking of things like War of the Worlds, Spielberg's movie with Tom Cruise, Children of Men, The Mist, Frank Darabont's movie, Cloverfield, I think particularly looks like it, and The Road, that movie with Viggo Mortensen.
Right, yeah.
There was a lot of post-apocalyptic existential horror in urban centres during the aughts, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think my most naughties is pretty much the same thing, but sort of framed differently. And I think I did talk about it in Doomsday, maybe I talked about it, and that is the zombie revival. There were hardly any zombie movies in the 90s, whereas in the 2000s the list is endless. And I think we covered it when we talked about Doomsday, but it's 28 Days Later, Dawn of the Dead remake, Land of the Dead, Wreck 2, Quarantine, which was the Wreck remake, Diary of the Dead, Resident Evil Apocalypse, Resident Evil Extinction, again, apocalypse movies, end of the world. Undead, that movie, that's Aussie film that we just talked about, Zombieland, Planet Terror, I Am Legend, Doomsday, I mentioned, House of the Dead, and Pontypool also in the 2000s, 2008. So yeah, plenty of zombie films came out in the noughties. So
do we think 28 Days Later has the claim of kicking this off? Because I think it has a credible claim.
I think it does. 28 Days Later came out in 2002. Everything else, apart from Resident Evil, which also came out in 2002, came after 28 Days Later. And also, 28 Days Later made it popular to have fast zombies as well.
Favorite scene?
There are so many good scenes in this movie. Pretty much every action horror sequence could be anyone's favorite scene. I mean, the obvious one to pick is the first scene in the cottage. But I will have to say, in terms of not a horrific horror scene, I really enjoyed Andy and Tammy getting past security, stealing a scooter, and cruising the deserted London. That was like quite amazing to see. And you've got like overturned cars on streets, and when they go into the pizza restaurant to get the keys, and there's food and plates still on the table. It really reminded me, I went to visit New Zealand and went to Christchurch after the big earthquake that happened in 2011, and there was a big part of the city that was still cordoned off because the buildings were just unsafe to be around, and you could see plates and food still on these tables in these restaurants, and it was just like very, very eerie, and they just nailed it in terms of what would happen if a city was just abandoned just like that.
I know, I love that stuff. It's just like exploring derelict spacecraft. I find that kind of thing really compelling.
All right, favorite scene for you?
For me, I'm afraid I picked something flashy, which is the firebombing of the Isle of Dogs, just because, I mean, London is a place I know reasonably well, and to see it being firebombed is just shocking.
It is,
disturbing, and his choice of shots is so good. I mean, they went for some fairly ambitious things, like seeing loads of people running down the street on fire, and
most cliche moment.
Bringing up something from Looker again, emergency strobe lights. Why do we start turning on flashing lights during an emergency to make it even harder for people to escape from buildings? They also turn off all of the lights when they say seal everything off, so turn off all of the lights and then turn on the emergency lights. I mean, I don't think that makes it more difficult for the infected. I think it just makes it more difficult for the military and the civilians. So I'm not sure why they did it.
I mean, I think this is my interpretation, was it wasn't really emergency lights, it was spotlights. So it just made it easier for the snipers to see people That was my interpretation. Yeah, it was weird that they put all of these civilians into a sealed basement and then turn off the lights. It's not exactly comforting, is it?
No, I don't think that's going to make everybody feel secure.
No, not at all. I mean, there are a few cliches in this movie. I don't think they're like cringeworthy. They're not, I don't groan at them. They're just like, oh yes, okay, of course. There's the fake scare when Flynn is in the helicopter. He's just chilling in the helicopter, and then Doyle, you see all these like mysterious shadows, and you think, oh, it's a zombie, but it's just Doyle, and he just goes and scares him, and then he does it again. He does a double.
He does it twice.
Best special effect.
I guess mine isn't real. It's not a special effect, I guess. I mean, it's a practical effect. So it's when Tammy and Andy are waiting in the secured room, and there's all sorts of chaos happening outside, and the guard goes to investigate, and he comes back, and he's now a zombie. So he's trying to get in the room, and then Scarlett, or you find out that Scarlett shoots him in the head, and his brains just splatter all over the window in front of the kids, and it's just like a very satisfying amount of blood.
Yes.
It's just so much blood on the window, and yeah, I don't know. There weren't that many scenes in the movie that were very sort of zombie gory, but that was one of them.
It was, yeah.
Special effect for you?
For me, I thought there was a very obvious choice, perhaps too obvious, which is Flynn flying his helicopter with the blades angled 2 meters from the ground and using it like a hedge strimmer across a whole advancing horde of infected. And it's just so much fun. There's limbs and tops of heads and bits flying everywhere. It's really gnarly zombie action.
Oh, yes.
A few minutes. I love it.
Favorite sound effect.
My favorite sound was Scarlett crunching over the bones of dead commuters in the London Underground.
Yeah.
I love that scene. Very Wreck, very Quarantine, the remake. But all night vision. But that sound, that crunching sound as she's going down the escalator. And it's not like a dry sound. There's some sort of damp squidginess to it there as well, so you can tell they're still a bit juicy. Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah. I found it kind of dry sounding. Like it sounded crispy. It sounded like these bodies are like roasted to perfection, kind of thing.
Dry roasted.
Yeah, dry roasted. They've been air fried. You know, they're really really crispy.
Dry roasted commuters. Oh dear. Yeah.
I did love
Great
that sound.
noise, though.
I did love that sound as well. In terms of sound, I did want to pick out, I mean, I've kind of already talked about it, but the use of silence is so good in this movie, especially in the first scene where it's just pumped up to like infinity in terms of tension, trying to escape from the cottage, and the scene on the boat, and there's that other guy trying to jump on the boat and he gets pulled under, and there are these zombies in the water trying to get onto the boat, and then Don does finally get away, and it's just serenity. Like there's no sound. It's all you hear is a gentle hum of the boat and like gentle waves of the river, and it's like I felt like, oh my god, I can breathe again after just the chaos and mayhem of what we just witnessed with all the zombies killing everyone.
Yeah.
Most funniest moment.
For me, the funniest moment was unintentional.
Oh yes.
It's Rose Byrne's character, Scarlett, after she has been shot and she dresses the wound herself, she says, "It's okay, it's just a flesh wound."
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, that just sends my brain to Monty Python. It's only a flesh wound.
Yeah.
Holy Grail. And I can't get past it. I just giggled. But that's not the film's fault.
Yeah, I always think of Last Action Hero. Because in the movie universe it's nothing, but in the real world that's gonna hurt.
Yeah, I know. And that's our movie.
Yes, and that's our movie.
Hi, this is Vincenzo Natali. I'm the director of Cube and Splice, and you're listening to Movie Oubliette.
All right, final verdict time. Should 28 weeks later be set free from its lockdown prison to escape to Paris and be adored as a modern zombie classic? Or should it be eviscerated by a helicopter propeller, firebombed, gassed, and finally dropped back into the darkness of the oubliette, spoken of no more? Conrad, what's your final verdict of this movie?
Well, I think we've both gone on a bit of a journey with this movie. I do remember being disappointed with it when I first saw it all those years ago on DVD. But on revisiting it, I do think it has been unjustly overlooked, because although it does do something different from the original movie, it is fascinating, very well crafted, very effective. And when you revisit it again, you definitely appreciate it. And I think it's a great stepping stone to whatever is going to come next with Danny Boyle's new trilogy. So, yeah, I do think it's been unfairly forgotten. It's a really solid survival action adventure film with a family drama twist underlying it all. And although I do have some misgivings about it, like I think it would have been interesting to explore Don's guilt and the dynamics with his family. Juan Carlos Fresnadillo said himself that he could have restructured it so they could have explored that more and then had the final twist for the finale. But as it is, I think it's a really strong and effective film with great cinematography and performances and score. And I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I would set it free and encourage people to try it again.
I 100% agree. I think rewatching it now, it's way better than I remember it. And I think on repeat watches, I think it does actually improve even more when you watch it. And I do love Juan's description of the film being about family. And when they do lose their initial father and mother, they get a new father and mother. And it's a really interesting dynamic. There are no annoying characters, which zombie films often have, which is amazing. There's two kids as almost main characters, and they aren't annoying, which is often the case. Like War of the Worlds, she just would not stop screaming. And that does not happen in this movie. It's
no, the brother's irritating in that one as well.
Yeah,
he seems to want to go to war, and he's 15.
yeah. So I think this movie is very different as well from other zombie movies. It's not that claustrophobic, let's survive in a house and board everything up type of movie. It's let's escape the military and the zombies by running through the deserted, abandoned streets of London. And it's an incredible setting. I love the score. It's such a good score. And also it's great to see a film that is not 90% CGI. You know, you've got digital effects to help with making it look abandoned and certain other scenes. But for the most part, it's a practical movie in a real setting, and it's just not very common to see these days, especially something apocalyptic like this. Yeah, I think it holds up really well. I think this movie should definitely be revisited by people, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're unanimous. I guess we'll have to find out what our patrons thought.
Oh, yes.
Hello, Gary.
Hello.
Can we have the final verdict, please?
They set it free.
Ah, yes, okay. They agreed with us.
They did, yes. Chizilla said 28 weeks later wasn't quite as good or as fresh as 28 days, but I still enjoyed it. Lots of zombie kills and gore, lots of tropes too. Looking forward to 28 years, especially with Boyle back at the helm. Let it out of the oubliette. Even if you throw it back in, it's going to get out. Which is very true. Film Aficionado says the suspenseful opening sequence of 28 Weeks Later is hitherto the best scene in the series. I recommend watching this sequel for that scene alone. Unfortunately, the rest of the movie is rather by the number zombie outbreak meets evil military affair. I also dislike how 28 Weeks Later undermines the somewhat hopeful ending of the original movie. All in all, not a bad film, but like most sequels, it is a shadow of the original.
Ooh.
So quite a balanced view from Film Aficionado there. And Jasmine says, How on earth is this forgotten in the oubliette? I mean, I'll certainly not forget it. I've not forgotten how there are enough plot holes to bury a horde of zombies in. I've not forgotten how every character was as dumb as a box of rocks. I've not forgotten how much I hated it from start to finish and how it sullied my appreciation for the first film. But I've been trying to forget it. Now I can't. Thanks, Oubliette crew.
Oh.
Thanks.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Scathing. Wow.
Yeah. So we forced Jasmine to remember something that she just loathed again. So sorry, Jasmine.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
So a good spread of views there.
Okay. But we do have the majority, Conrad. So let's set it free.
Yes. Let's just open that barrier and set it free.
Yay! Let's go to Paris. Bye!
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Nice to see another one escape the fold.
All right, Conrad, what are we doing in the next episode? What's the film?
Well, in the similar vein to us celebrating the release of the belated sequel 28 years later for this episode, for the next episode, we thought it might be fun to take a look at a Superman-related film because of the new movie coming out. So we will be exploring the 2006 American superhero film, Superman Returns.
Oh, yes. The movie that no one seems to talk about at all.
No, they don't. Everyone remembers the Christopher Reeve originals. Everyone remembers the modern ones, the Man of Steel. But
yes.
Yeah. People don't seem to talk about Superman Returns anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it was supposed to be a sort of a revival of the franchise. It's supposed to be a sequel, right?
There
to
was.
the Reeve movies.
Yeah. It was supposed to be a continuation of the Reeve movies with a Reeve look-alike-y. And they had a sequel scheduled, but died on its arse. So why? That's the thing. Why?
Ooh,
and does it deserve a second shake, even though its director is not as popular as he used to be?
Right. Yes. Well, I'm keen to revisit it. I don't really remember much. Just two key scenes. The eye scene and the plane scene.
Yeah. I have a sneaking suspicion that's the problem.
Okay. All right.
But let's see.
Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong.
Let's revisit that.
Yeah, should be fun.
Okay. Well, listeners, if you want to keep up to date with that episode, you can follow us on all our platforms as Movie Oubliette, or you can email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com.
Yes, and if you want to support the show, head on over to Patreon, where for as little as $1 you can get extra content, and for $5 you get voting rights, and for $10 you can be an executive producer, just like Chazilla, Isaac Sutton, Dr. Doggy, Serge, Iconographer, Ryan A. Potter, and Nick Hardy.
Yes, and we have merchandise at Redbubble and a YouTube channel. And please, if you have not already, give us a rating and review on everything, including Spotify. And you can comment now on Spotify.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
And tell a friend too.
Yes, please. All right, Conrad, that's another episode done. Until next time, listeners, goodbye.
Bye.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette.
Targets are now free. We've lost control.